everyone, and welcome to our new episode of todebate.net, our podcast of debates. I am Sebastian, one of your co-hosts, and the other co-host is right here in front of me on my little screen, and it's Dirk. How are you, Dirk?
I'm doing fantastically well, how you like to say. You're far away from me right now, so...
I'm so far away, I'm actually on planet Mars because I thought it was worth going, so I'm actually recording this from the planet Mars. This is why our listeners may experience some delay, but I think you're a wizard in terms of audio editing, so I think you'll manage to reduce that little lag. Let's go to the motion of today. Legalizing doping in professional sports, yes or no? And we decided by flip of the coin whether Dirk or I will be in favor or against the motion. Dirk, you will be in favor of legalizing doping in professional sports.
Absolutely. And by another flip of the coin, we decided that you go first and I go second.
Again, I always have to go first nowadays. I can't believe this flip of... Is that a German coin or something? It has like two tails?
You flipped.
No faces on it? Oh, right. I forgot. Okay. so much for me.
Yeah, okay. So it's self-sabotage.
We have 2 minutes each, then 3 minutes, then 1 minute to conclude Oxford style of debating. And I will start right away.
Sebastian goes first and argues against the motion.
Dirk, I hope you're not on drugs so we can have a fair debate. I'm not on coffee, but I may be high on mango juice. The thing is, let me ask you a question, and the question goes to our listeners too. Lance Armstrong, do you remember that American cyclist? Was he a role model once you had discovered that he had doped? Would you really consider him a role model if he had legally doped? Really? I'm not so sure. In fact, my first problem with legalizing doping is that whoever has more money will actually probably win the race. You will be able to invest in research, in advanced drugs, and what have you. Secondly, and this is directly connected to that previous point, when I said you can do advanced research, there's a risk that the athlete will actually take more and more drugs. In fact, if you look at the mortality and the age at which past athletes die, it's scary. They die when they're 40, 50, 60. And the thing is, it's not about free choice because it forces everyone in the pack to use doping, otherwise they won't stand a chance. And therefore it has an influence also on the younger generation, which will believe that there is no other way but to go with doping. So we'll have no more role model in sports, which is one of the aspects of professional sports as opposed to amateur sports. And finally, and that's my final point in that introductory statement, the beauty of the sport. It may be a subjective argument, but is it not more interesting to see what the human body can naturally do, the natural talent that can exercise itself in the professional sports? Is it not more beautiful to see how a human being can go through pain instead of seeing mutants on the screen or in person? I argue that legalizing doping will kill all this, will kill the dream of seeing the human body in this natural environment of going through pain. It will kill role models, and it will kill athletes directly.
Now, it's Dirk's turn. Let's hear his argument.
We have a definition problem. What do we consider doping? Wikipedia defines it as the use of banned athletic performance-enhancing drugs. So by definition, that means that using non-banned athletic performance-enhancing drug is legal already and in fact widely used. What else do you think is used when your beautifully described athletes train up their bodies to their maximum natural performance? Do you think they are roaming the fields and eat the weeds from the ground and just live in their natural state? Of course not. They are eating careful, selected, manufactured, industrial-grade food, vitamins, and nutrients. They are following carefully designed and crafted training methods, and their technology they are using to compete with each other is high-tech as well. So The question then becomes first, why do we have drugs that are banned from use in professional sports in the first place? There are things like fairness, concerns about athletes' health, you name them all. The fact that athletes are role models, we like them to win fair and square, but it comes down to what are we expected to really care about, because apparently we are pretty hypocritical. In our lives, we dope ourselves all the time. Coffee, nicotine, sleeping pills, and we enhance our performance on a regular basis. There has been a survey conducted recently where students were asked if they would consider brain-enhancing pills in their studies. And, well, more than 70% said yes, of course I would consider it if it's safe enough. Yet when it comes to professional sports, we demand the standards we are not living up against ourselves. And the health risk you mentioned, well, that risk would go away to some extent if you can dope or, well, enhance your performance out in the open, properly controlled with properly conducted methods, and the drugs you're using are properly controlled and of a high quality. So maybe we could even enhance the health of our athletes so they don't die that young. So I vote for the motion. We should indeed legalize doping in professional sports and stop the doublespeak.
And now on to Sebastian. Let's hear his rebuttal.
Maybe you have a point. Maybe you have a point that we need to ban even more things, even more drugs. I am not a doctor. I'm not familiar with the drugs which are actually legal. Coffee or other vitamins. I don't know to what extent they actually affect radically physical performance or integrity, but I am still against any form of drugs. In fact, case in point, although I'm not a professional athlete, I don't drink coffee, I don't drink tea, precisely because I know they affect the brain in ways that are not particularly healthy. You have not brought this up, but just in case you will, drugs are not the same as allowing technology enhancements, because precisely those tech enhancements do not affect physical integrity. And drugs greatly surpass still enhancement that you can see with technology. So I maintain the health risk is for me one of the main aspect which drives me to say we should not go towards the route of legalizing doping, because athletes will increase medication. They would go against what the doctors, the sports doctors would actually prescribe them with, and they would risk an overdose because they will naively think, being not to doctor themselves, that increasing medication may sometimes help increase performance, which is not necessarily the case. Now, maybe what we need to do is fund some of the anti-drug detection a bit more importantly, so that we can detect the additional drugs which are in the systems of athletes. And more research is maybe necessary on that front, where more funding, maybe which can come from advertising, maybe a fraction of the advertising which goes towards professional sports can go towards anti-doping techniques and agencies which crucially need that money. But let me come back to you with a proposal for you. Maybe it's going to be a very original proposal. I'm still against legalizing doping in professional sports, but here's what I'm going to propose. I'm proposing that you have two series of professional sports. One which is complete drug-free, and another one which is everything's fine, everything's not legal, but it's some kind of other sports or show, because I think it will be a show, where people can take whatever drug they want. They can die. It will be some kind of reality TV show, and people, in my opinion, will go back to watching the proper, clean sports. And I'm actually quite serious about it. The reason I mention this is if you look at what Russia and China are doing right now, among other countries, I am not familiar with other countries, but these are the ones in the media, they use professional sports as a way to enhance nationalistic sentiment of being a power or a superpower or an old power that is still present and viable. And I think it's actually dangerous diplomatically. We're just debating on diplomatic protocols, because it shows that those states are willing to almost practically publicly cheat and not respect international rules. Imagine they do this for sports. Imagine if they do this for other things. So my point is, let's have the Olympics of the free world, and let's have the Olympics of China, Russia, and Dirk.
Dirk's turn. Let's hear his rebuttal.
Thank you, Sebastian. I get the impression you gave me all the arguments I need, so I don't know why you think you're gonna win this argument. But well, Let's try one by one. First off, all the things you mentioned, like risking your health, taking more drugs, you speak as if that wouldn't happen already. You speak like if that is something that's not everyone doing. It's fairly obvious. There have been studies that stated that as much as 65% of the Tour de France bikers are actually taking performance-enhancing drugs. And when you say we need to increase the number of drugs we're detecting and we need to find more of them, well, you're never going to find them all. You're never going to find all methods. And at some point, it's actually going to get into a farce. So it is unfair. It is unhealthy. Athletes are role models. We heard it all. Sounds all very good. I even go one step further. Those arguments hit all home for me. They're all true. Yet, two things are pretty obvious. We turned professional sports into a multi-million spectacle, and in this spectacle, we expect athletes to achieve higher increasing goals. With pure training alone, those peak performance goals are not possible anymore. Physiologically, humans changed much less in the past year than today's sports performance suggests. So the improvement came from someplace else, technology and science. And by demanding otherwise, we are asking them to lie to us, and we lie to ourselves, because let's see how the incentives align. Since only those athletes make a living that perform at high levels, it is a high stakes game, and everyone involved knows that the audience cares only when the news break. Take, for example, the Tour de France again. Do you really believe, actually believe that anyone can win that race without enhancing himself in some way? And if it would be detectable, do you really think it would happen nonetheless? Bikes already weigh next to nothing. Athletes train years and years full time, and in the end, all bikers are high performing athletes. If the winner takes it all, how are you supposed to set yourself apart? By training just a little better? By chance? Dream on. So let's take the common argument. Health? Sure, let's do better than today. We could improve the athlete situation dramatically by allowing controlled use of performance enhancers. In the end, it is done anyway. Why not improve the methods and ensure personal health? Fairness? Sure. If all methods are out in the open, then we effectively level the playing field. A study from Sports Illustrated showed that everyone takes it anyway, so maybe doing it out in the open, allowing to everyone, is the right way to go. Role model? Either we change the rules of the game to avoid other things than peak performance, or we stop forcing our athletes to lie. This is damaging the moral standing much more than open action would. And while we're at it, why don't we trust the athletes to decide for themselves? In the end, it's a trade-off, and understanding risk would allow informed decisions. It is a matter of freedom, too, to decide what is done to one's own body and health. This is a freedom we all enjoy. Why don't we allow this to our athletes as well? Finally, an argument about practicality, which I kind of took already at you. If you cannot detect all methods, then we shouldn't actually try. Instead, stop lying to ourselves. How is that for fairness and sportsmanship?
Final statements. It's Sebastian's turn.
I maintain legalizing doping increases the health risks. In fact, it would make things worse. It's not a freedom, because you're basically blocking anyone who does want to compete without using drugs to use drugs, because everyone would in that case be using drugs. If anything, it is possible to detect everything, but it may take time. So retroactively, and this is what's happening currently, you will have people losing their medals 4 or 8 years later. So I would say let's retroactively remove medals indefinitely, right? 10 years, 20 years after the event has happened. It's not great, but gradually people will lose face because they've been shamed by having doped in the past. Secondly, I do want to have that dream, I do want to have that beauty in the sport and have role models, which is way beyond what you're talking about. If kids are looking at adults and professional athletes taking sports drugs, what prevents you from taking regular drugs, coke, marijuana, and what have you, right? There's almost no limit anymore. And finally, I maintain, let's have professional sports which are clean, and you can have your show, which is not called professional sports, where you let people indeed do whatever they want. It will be your show with coffee-addicted Dirk and Chinese and Russian athletes, if you want. And sorry for Russians and Chinese people who listen to us. If you're not doped, then you will be allowed to compete in professional sports, if you'd like, in my regular, beautiful sport. So we agree. It is a spectacle if you're doping, but it's not the sport.
Next up, Dirk.
I try to explain a few things. Number one, doping is a question of definition. So what one people's drugs is another people recreational substance. What one people doping is another people technology enhancement. Second, there are plenty of moral and ethical questions to let athletes off the hook, because in reality, we don't give them a chance anyway. Our athletes have no way of competing without doping. Just because we ignore that, or because we make some methods illegal, or kid ourselves into we could find them all, doesn't make it any truer. And thirdly, I would even argue that by legalizing doping, we improve sports fairness, level the field for everyone, and improve health and security for the athletes. Now, I would love to see the fair competition as well. So in that, we agree. But in reality, that's just not happening. So please go now to our website and vote for me to support my position, which is yes, we should in fact legalize doping in professional sports.
All right. Thanks for debating today, Dirk, and thank you for listening. So you can vote on today's motion, for and against. Go on todebate.net, 2 is the number, and you can vote for or against the motion. You can also continue the discussion, add your own arguments on our social media channels. We have a Facebook group. You can interact with us on Twitter. We have a Google Plus community, and we'll talk about the feedback and your comments in our next in-between episode. Or how do you call it, Dirk?
I called it an in-between episode.
Okay, and thank you for listening. So stay tuned until our next debate. Thank you, Dirk.
Because there's no real good reason why marijuana is illegal and alcohol is not, and
I completely agree.
Nicotine is okay, but LSD is not, and so on and so forth.
I completely agree. So I have nothing against, by the way.
When you say that,
well, nothing against. You hate it when I agree, and then I show how I don't agree. I say I agree, but I actually do not.
I was just I just had to say that we are in a debate, for heaven's sake. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, when it comes to sports, I do really believe that we are basically kidding ourselves. So as long as there are ways to drug yourself into higher performance, right now we set all the incentives in a way that people would be plain stupid if they didn't do it. So if you can win millions and basically make a living only if you perform at a specific level in your field, then people have no incentive whatsoever to do that noble thing that you demand of them. They may do that for the Olympics, but they don't do that for the professional sports events we're talking about.
So professional sports, from as far as I know, is actually not about millions of dollars. It goes indeed for a very few subset of top professional players, but the rest of the professional players, they don't earn that much. It's a little bit like developers, right? You have that small sliver of app developers who make a lot of money, and then you have a huge swath of developers, and in this case professional athletes, who are not earning that much. So yes, maybe they have the incentive of using drugs, but they're not going to make it to the top either, even by using drugs. They're not going to make such a huge big living out of it. So I'm not actually convinced. And secondly, I actually do believe that some, maybe a minority, I hope it's more than a minority, of athletes are actually not using any drugs or any kind of enhancements. I may be naive, but I want to believe that. In fact, I make probably you laugh, but I had thought of competing in the Tour de France just to say hello to my mum. I would actually be on the first stage of the Tour de France, be at the very back of the main riders and say hello, and then probably drop out of the race because it's insane. As you said, 3 weeks in the mountains and what have you. No way. I'm not going to be able to do that. I used to be a bit of an amateur cyclist. But then, the first time I went on a mountain, that was enough. I stopped it.
Yeah, mountains are not built for bikes.
Well, if you go down, it's nicer. Going up is like kind of...
Absolutely. But I gathered that you're against legalizing doping, right?
I'm still against it, yes. I can repeat my arguments now off the record if you want. Right?
No.
I finished, I improvised actually on my last sentence saying, hey, it will kill, kill, kill.